Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday. So, excuse me, after having a kind of an interesting week so far, actually good week for the markets, but not a ton of direct market moving news. Now we're actually going to get like real economic numbers here with the jobless claims. Also, something I'm noticing today is that China has dumped a ton of money into the market, some 250 billion yuan, which is kind of like with the repo crisis. It's all largely to help companies and stuff like pay taxes and stuff like that because there's a shortage of liquidity. But, I found that when they've dumped a lot of money into the markets, that tends to be good for the risk markets. So we'll see what happens. Let's come and look at the charts. You can see here we are up once again. Yesterday was just an amazing day. So when we left, let's see here, it was 10 o'clock, right? So we got this. There was kind of this head and shoulders pattern forming. But it did not end up being like the volume never confirmed, the neckline never broke, and they pushed higher and made another pretty significant up move. And here overnight, they are continuing to push up, although there has been some pullbacks. So I have to say, it has just been a really strong bull move in equities. Treasuries, once again, kind of struggling to hold these levels overnight. And a little bit of steepening going on there. I guess that's good for our banks, but I don't know. This one has kind of been tricky. They'll be look like they're gonna just go and then bounce back up, and I don't know. Here on the open though, they're trending down pretty hard at the moment. All right. Oil came down yesterday off of the oil reports with a surprise build. Okay. Gold, man, we're like, oh, this is so annoying, but then look at that. Whoosh, up. Pretty bullish looking in gold. I don't know, maybe this is the spot to get in on a longer term play there in gold. Copper also moving up. And lastly, let's just take a look at the dollar. The dollar turning back down again. And come back over to a shorter term chart. You can really see yesterday the dollar recovered a little bit, but now it's made a new low. So there's a risk of it, going back and starting another push to lows. So that's where we're at. Oh, why do I have that over there? Got the robots going. It looks like one of them already took a trade. Oh, how come I don't see it over here? Position 1L. Oh, it looks like... Oh, I get this thing again. No, I don't know why it did that. I guess it's saying that it would have taken a position, but it didn't because of the time frame or something like that. So I guess it's not. It is kind of on the bias of long. Kathy Wood's stock picks, that's so silly. Telling you. I just don't want to be... I don't want to be involved in the stock hype game. We can talk about how to... manage your portfolio and tendencies of the market and things related to trading, but I don't want to talk specific stocks. Stock futures edged higher on Thursday as investors counted on more pandemic relief and speedy vaccine rollouts under the new Biden administration to aid the economic recovery. And in funny news, a cannabis farm has been found in London's financial district. Oh, that's funny. Well, come back over here. It's kind of interesting, the narrative at the moment. So there is definitely a number of actors, particularly the investment bank analysts, that are, all in on the, oh, it's over now sort of a thing. So it's kind of like, oh, everything was so terrible, but now the day that Joe Biden has become president, he is in, everything's fine. Which is kind of silly because all of the executive actions that he's made as related to the coronavirus are, kind of pointless and aren't going to make any difference. And so here's the weird thing that I'm already seeing. So one of the things was that the Joe Biden administration, they came in, they fired the guy that was in charge of Operation Warp Speed. They changed its name. And now, one of the things that is happening is Dr. Fauci is still in there, but the team that Dr. Fauci leads is coming out and saying, the administration, the guys that were in here before us, which were us, they weren't doing a very good job and we're concerned. So that it's almost like they're kind of trying to set a pretext so that they can say, oh, when something bad happens, they can say, oh, no, it wasn't us. It was Donald Trump. And the risk at the moment that they seem to be concerned about is like these new virus variants. So, all right. So here comes the jobless claims here in about 30 seconds. Initial jobless claims estimated 910K versus the previous reading of 965. I don't know if this is likely to be good or bad. I think that, maybe it will be bad and the markets could shrug it off. But let's see. So can we now officially hold Biden accountable for every single COVID death due to his mishandling of the I know, right? It's always the same argument when you get a new president, right? About what he's responsible for and what he's not. I'm still waiting. Looks like 10-year yield is at, just a little bit above 1% here. Okay, so the initial claims is slightly lower than the estimate, 900 versus 910. Continuing claims is less than the forecast to 5.054 million versus an estimated 5.4 million. So, wait, am I reading that right? 5.054 million versus 5,400K. Yeah, it is. I don't know why the estimate and the actual art have been put in different units of measurements, but whatever. Okay, so there is a bit of back and forth in the Treasury here. I would say the numbers were better than expected, but it's really just kind of okay. So there's still a couple. Oh, there's building permits too. Building permits 4.5. Housing starts 5.8. I mean, those are pretty high numbers. Or I didn't have estimates on those. Oh, actually, on the December numbers, like the overall number, they were both higher than expected. So, wow. So they just move up like that, huh? Guess I got it wrong. Not quite sure why they buying up there like that. So there was a pretty solid, like, 2 upticks there in the treasury, and it's coming back on it. Let's see here. Winston's man, guess I got it wrong. I was wrong. Trump finished his term. I have no idea how he did, but he finished all 4 years, though the case he could be made. He checked out after the election. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that is an unfair characterization. I really think that after the election, a lot of people, he was so focused on the voter fraud thing. They still did a lot of work, actually. So they were, okay, something's going on here. I guess President LaGuardia's talking here. Oh, I totally forgot about. I mean, I knew that the ECB thing was coming, but I totally forgot about that. I think I want to buy that one though, actually. Anyways, he was they were doing a lot of executive actions. Media didn't really report on them, but it also kind of feels like that he personally, from the perspective of like, you know, setting narratives and stuff like that, he definitely like just checked out. He was only interested in the voter fraud thing for a long time, and although I also kind of think that was maybe more a function of his base than himself. There's like this weird feedback effect going on with Donald Trump and his followers, where he was pushing the voter fraud thing beforehand, and so then when the vote happened, his voters were like really, really upset about it, and so then when all of the information that he was getting was voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud, so he was only interested in that. But they did do other stuff. They did a couple of moves in kind of like foreign policy things to do things where, so that the Biden administration couldn't just do what they wanted. Like a good example was labeling China as, committing genocide. Right. So there was a couple of moves over there that makes it difficult for the Biden administration to do what they want in regards to China. Roger Stone registered the trademark, stop this. Well, they thought that they were going to do it in 2016. In fact, well, I mean, the whole thing is that a lot of Donald Trump supporters were saying that they believed that there was voter fraud in 2016 and that they just didn't expect it to be Donald Trump to do as well as they did, and so it overcame it. I don't know. I mean, the difficulty is that there very clearly is evidence that there is some degree of voter fraud. When you kind of add all of the numbers up of the suspected voter fraud, it's significant, but they didn't actually go through and prove those particular instances, so we can't really say. Of course, people will tell you, oh, and then none of it happened. You get in trouble for saying that there was any kind of voter fraud, but there has been some confirmed cases of voter fraud. Some. I'm not going to say there was like millions of votes, but there has been some confirmed cases of voter fraud. Al Gore, if I were in the Senate, I would vote to convict Trump. Who cares? Al Gore, you're washed out. Nobody cares about you. Yeah, the Google Trends data on voter fraud consequences back in September. Well, it's interesting. It doesn't prove that anything happened, but they're gonna sell down again. Well, Brandon certainly took that move down as a sell signal. You could see how, when it happened, it was like people sold on LaGuard's comments, even though I don't necessarily think that that is like a huge deal to the markets. I mean, look, like one central bank person says, oh, we're still, watching things and we're cautious and stuff. That's not necessarily like, oh, okay, now we have to have a trend down day, right? The flexibility of purchases to ensure a smooth transition. Well, I'm kind of sitting here arguing with myself over the price that I took, but I think, I felt like I had an informational advantage there, and so it was reasonable to just take it with the market order there, and there was no way that I would know that it's going to come back 8 ticks. In fact, the reality is that in the area that we're trading, you're likely to have a lot of erratic movement because the liquidity is a little bit reduced. I mean, they're putting 50s up right now. Barr said they found, Barr said they found no evidence. I don't know. Like, yeah, Uzi says that it wouldn't have been that if Trump won. I find that some of the claims that so-called experts make on this are like just straight up they're, well, how do I put this? Okay. I'm a data scientist. I will test market edges to determine if there are predictive signals that I can find in the market. Now, I could backtest a predictive signal and I could come out and I could say, oh, wow, this technical analysis stuff, it's really good. I found these really, really great edges and clearly, at this moment in time, it's a big buy or it's a big sell or whatever. And that I don't do that, right? I'm always trying to give you guys the most nuanced and carefully worded analysis of what I have discovered possible, because I know that you guys are smart and I know that that's what's going to help you the most, right? So that is exactly what happens with voter fraud. If you were an expert in voter fraud, then you would know better than to say that like no voter fraud occurred, period. That's just a ridiculous. Has there been at least one case of voter fraud in the past 8 years? Yes, there has been, right? So when I see some of these claims like that this was the most secure election ever, I read that as some idiot saying shit for the cameras. That isn't really an accurate reflection or most nuanced reading of the reality on the ground. That's how I see it. I'm not saying that means that there was voter fraud, but let's just be honest. There was more. They could have dug deeper. Is the thing. But there was definitely cases where like some votes weren't received, or there was kind of like shenanigans to make it so that one party's votes were challenged less than another party's votes and things like that. So. What about Gore versus Bush? It wasn't such a big deal at the time. Well, I think it was. I think that with Gore versus Bush, it was much more unexpected. The only reason why I go into that is because, especially in the next 100 days, you are going to get a lot of headlines coming out of the markets that if you just go off of the headline, it's going to give you the wrong read. Think about it this way. If fraud weren't a concern, a huge investigation into it to prove Trump wrong and make him look worse would have been done immediately. The avoidance of it altogether was odd. Well, I wouldn't say that there was an avoidance of it altogether. The thing that I found interesting about that was that there was some investigation. Most of these states were run by Republicans, and so they did look into it. But in all of the instances that I'm aware of, it really looked to me more like a token investigation. It was like these guys don't think that the fraud was there. And so they, did the most basic look that they could. And then, of course, because they don't want to see it, it's not there. You know what I mean? I lived in Florida then, hanging Chads then, and we have Chads hanging around with the Karens. I'm not sure we are evolving. Yeah, but here's the thing about Florida, right? Was that after that, they fixed their voting system. Like, this is my complaint, because I'm not going to go in and say that I believe that there was voter fraud so much as that I really don't think that the rules and procedures that they have set up in those states are as good as they should be. And Florida is a great example of a case where when they had a problem, the legislator and the government down in there said this is never going to happen again, and they created an excellent system, and they don't have those problems anymore. And I'm just like, why are they not doing this in in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and now apparently Georgia? Like, the frustrating thing about this is that it's really like straight up Republicans' fault that they lost Georgia, because there was a number of policy changes and things that people made without going through the legislature that the GOP could have fought that would have changed the outcome of that election there, and they've been just letting it go. They made me say my name 5 times. Yeah, it's just like, if they were in Georgia and they had, the rules that you set can affect turnout. You're Korean. Well, that's cool. Let's see if it reads out your name.
Guan Hyojin says I'm Korean boy.
There you go. Welcome. I was kind of learning a little bit of Korean, but trying to memorize the symbols to really even learn took a lot of time, and I kind of lost interest in it. I don't know, because I got this thing between, like, I want to learn Chinese too, and I want to learn Korean. It would help if I had somebody around all the time that was speaking Chinese with me, but we had to sign an iPad with an alcohol-soaked Q-tip and couldn't match the signature on my license. Yeah, well, in Georgia, it was the signature matching issue, right? That was where they were saying, well, we should do a full audit and match signatures and stuff, and then, like, they couldn't even do it. Well, my fade in the E-mini doesn't look so good. It hasn't stopped out yet, but it doesn't look good. My treasury trade is looking great. I'm not quite sure what it is about what LaGuard is saying that makes the equity traders so persistent on the sell side. I have to say that what I'm seeing here, well, let me pull this down. When you look at the volume, right? Like, look, it's pretty aggressive volume on what I would call informed trading here. It's just that I think that these informed traders are going to be proven wrong. I think that the comments that LaGuard's making at the moment aren't really that materially important to the market for the overall day. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Anyways, so I was about to go into to kind of segue into something a little bit more relevant, because the voter fraud thing, it's like the frustration that I have is that I think that they should be changing laws down there, and they're probably not going to do anything, and it's going to be the same thing next time around. You know, like at the very least, you could go in and say, okay, well, we can implement this rule and this rule, and it shouldn't really change anything, but it will give you more confidence in the outcome of an election, and it won't be a problem again. But they're not doing that. It's like, they want to keep everything as loose as possible so that they can commit voter fraud. That's what it looks like to me. But you're going to get a lot of stuff in the next few months, because here's the thing. Here's the playbook. When you're president, when you become president, the playbook is come in on your inauguration day, make a call for unity, and then go out. And in the first 100 days of your presidency, you try and set a pace so that you have some momentum that goes through for the rest of your 4 years. So the media is going to be doing a lot of, brown nosing the administration over the next 100 days. And it's that first 100 days that people watch the most. Okay? So you're already kind of getting a little bit of that, right? That's why I was pointing out that thing earlier where the coronavirus team, Fauci, is saying, oh, the Donald Trump team were hiding information from us and things are actually worse than we looked. But then it's like, that was you. It is very telling that we have the technology to implement a totally secure election system, but have not. I'm not so sure it's quite that simple, Richard. So a lot of people will say that there are technological ways to have a fully secure election, like doing it on a blockchain, for instance. But the reality is that there are ways, or at least there are concerns that there might be ways to game even those kinds of systems. And in fact, especially among some of the older folks, there is a very significant skepticism and distrust of electronic voter systems. And I think that if there was a law to make it blockchain, that there would be a significant amount of pushback against that on the premise that it's not as secure as the people say. So here's where, when you're talking about paper ballots, it's like, I sign my ballot, it goes into a locked box, it is immediately transferred to the counting center, and there's procedures. You can watch the physical custody of the ballots and confirm that there was nothing in there to begin with, and you can verify that everything was done right. When you get into electronic systems like blockchains, there's this concern that somebody can just change a number in there, and nobody would even know or notice. And even with the blockchain, it's like, okay, yeah, but what's stopping somebody from printing a bunch of addresses and just making votes out of nowhere? So I don't think that would, I don't think that would convince the people that are concerned about this sort of issue. Just saying. And that's a large factor behind why we don't really have electronic voting systems. Or when we do, there's a paper trail that's left. At the risk of sounding oldish, which I am, you have a bit more faith that people work well enough to pull together some big conspiracy. Most people want to put their pants on and eat donuts. Well, nobody's saying that there's a organized conspiracy. That's the thing. I think this is another thing to understand for markets, is that people can carry off very complicated things without any coordination whatsoever, simply because they have interests that are in line with each other. And you see this in markets all the time. Look at GameStop, for instance. That was a short squeeze. Okay, now doing a short, like a market manipulation of that type, like intentionally squeezing out large firms that are short to make money, that could be a complicated organization. I could go and I could put together a bunch of traders and we could do a ton of organization to make something like that happen. But here's the thing. You don't have to do it, because you get enough people that have their interests aligned together as such that they know that if they do the thing, which in this case is all they got to do is buy GameStop, that they can squeeze these guys out. And that alone organizes them, and the individual actors know what they need to do in that particular situation, and completely skipping the need for significant or like a large conspiracy. And the same thing can happen with voter fraud, as you go in and you set up rules a certain way just because you know that that's going to change people's behavior in a certain way. And you can use that change in rules to affect election outcomes. Republicans do it all. I mean, frankly, Republicans are better at this than Democrats. That's why it's so shocking that the Republicans lost Georgia, because they essentially allowed them to make these changes that were extremely negative for the voter turnout for Republicans. I mean, a boosted Democrat turnout, essentially, and it caused them to lose 2 Senate seats in Georgia, guys. In Georgia. Right? No conspiracy. But I'm telling you, there was more to that, to the Republicans losing the Georgia seat. There were things happening in Georgia months ago that, should have been big red flags. And frankly, over the past 4 years, because there was the same thing last time around where they thought that maybe a Democrat was going to win the governor's seat, right? So it was never not a conspiracy. And here's the thing is, my point is always that you should have empirical evidence for claims. That's why I'm like, I can't sit down and say that that voter fraud affected the outcome of the election, because I don't have enough evidence for that. I can say that it's curious that we're not given the evidence that I would need to be able to make that determination, but that's a different issue. Okay. Here, when it comes to like the voter turnout in Georgia, there is a large degree of empirical evidence that shows how these particular policy changes that they made in Georgia as they pertain to voting affect voting, and that they would benefit Democrats. And all the Republicans just looked the other way as it was happening. Almost as if they wanted to lose. Yeah, Stacey Abrams is one reason Georgia went blue. Yeah, they changed all the rules. And I mean, like, it straight up is a thing where, like, there was a number of voters in Georgia that just didn't go to the polls very often. There's Ace. Missed a pretty solid down move. I tried catching it, but it didn't work out. So I'm kind of watching what's coming through here on the squawk without like actively watching President Lagarde, because I find that so distracting sometimes. And I don't know. I'm not quite sure I see what justified a 10-point down move, but anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I was saying there was a lot of people in Georgia that just like straight up weren't voting. And when you get all of those people voting, and then you have moderates in there convinced to vote Democrat, then yeah, all of the sudden Georgia is a solidly blue state. And you kind of have to wonder if they're able to win both Senate seats off of a runoff election. Like, you've really got to wonder, especially with the position that the GOP is in now internally. Ugh. Okay, well, Indy took the short off of the informed trading and he got a winner off of it. Very good. Indy also took a short that, well, it would have to go a lot further for Indy's short to work out. And it's kind of funny. I'm sitting here like, I don't really want to talk about the voter fraud thing anymore, just because like that we done that so many times, and like that was done and gone with. Like, I was quite, to be honest with you, late September, early October, I was basically coming to the conclusion that Donald Trump was probably going to lose unless something changed, right? Like, I'm well over that. And when the whole voter fraud thing came along, I was, it was like 2 days after that, I was like, well, they should absolutely pursue it, but it's not going to change anything, right? And now, 3 months later, we're still talking about it. And I'm like, I feel the desire to talk about it, but then I sit back and I'm like, but I know logically that I don't want to talk about it because it's done and over with and not relevant anymore, But somehow I'm finding ways to make it relevant, right? Because the thing that I want you to understand, if we're trying to be informed traders and trading off of news and so forth, so you have to understand that there is going to be, in the near future, a significant amount of trying to flavor the information that you get, right? Which is a problem that you have to deal with if you're trying to trade off of that information. Politics is boring now. Jesus, Biden saved us everything. Well, that's a funny thing, is that for the average person, like the average person has been very involved in politics on Facebook these days, right? But they're not going to be. They're going to go back to they don't care. You love talking about the election, but I'm just not as uppity. Like, I try to be like as specific and like, when people say something that I think that there's more nuance to it than that, I have a hard time not saying anything about it. But it's the issue of voter fraud in particular that I just don't find relevant anymore. But what I do find relevant is that there's going to be a lot of PR and stuff going out to try and make the first 100 days. The Biden administration wants to do everything they can to make the first 100 days of their presidency look good. So you're going to run into this issue where Joe Biden wants to do things that are not positive for stocks. They simply aren't, right? If you go in and you raise taxes, that generally speaking is not good for stocks, right? So what happens? They have to go and play defense on that, and they're going to come out, and you saw it with Janet Yellen when she did her confirmation hearing, right? They asked her about the taxes, and she basically kind of was able to say, well, it's bad, but it's not that bad, and it shouldn't be a big deal, right? And you're going to find that with almost every story that comes out. So you have to watch how do you deal with this. Just remember that actions speak louder than words. Focus on what is the thing that is actually changing, and then you go and you do the math. What is the net effect on my valuation, right? So, and I know that can be hard in some cases. Like, for instance, probably the worst one is going to be immigration, right? So I do believe that immigration policy affects markets. I'm unsure how exactly. That's a complicated interaction that's hard to make a straight call on what the eventual outcome is on it. And it may be one where it does have a net effect on the markets, but it's so subtle that it's very difficult for us to see as it's happening, right? But that's going to be a big one because based on what I'm seeing from these executive orders and everything, we're likely to have another border crisis this summer. And that's going to be a big news story at the time. Again, it will be regular people won't be paying attention to it anymore because they're making news boring, but we will still be paying attention, right? And how do we interpret the information that we get? So, cares, well, I mean, listen, I said that we're probably going to lose, like back in October. I can go back and I can find, because I remember almost exactly what I said on Facebook to it, to like my friends and family. I was basically saying, it looks to me like the election really hinges on what people think about the pandemic. And it looks like they don't like what Donald Trump is saying. And so I think that Biden might win. But, you're out practically asking for lockdowns. And so if you get them, don't complain. This is what I said. It's funny because now at the moment, I don't think he's going to do a lockdown, but we'll see. If we start getting like another wave from a variant of the coronavirus, maybe they will. Pressed on whether the ECB is already pursuing yield curve control, President Lagarde stresses the central bank is committed to preserve current favorable financing conditions until at least at the end of March 2022, supported by a flexible implementation of asset purchases. He can't do a lockdown, at least not universally. If he does it, I see in the form of forcing states to capitulate by leveraging federal funds. Yes. No, I think that's exactly right, Uzi. Like, he doesn't have the federal authority to do it. I wouldn't put it past him for him to try anyways, or put out like a token presidential order for everybody to shut down. Like you can do a presidential order. Hey, governors, you all need to completely lock down. And here's what because Donald Trump did that. I mean, that's what Donald Trump did, right? He could do the same sort of a thing, but the recommendation could be like just everybody locked down right now. So, and then it would be an issue of which governors go along with it and which ones don't and all that stuff. Laguard, I want to downplay any expectations that the digital euro is about to come. Media sure is interested about the cryptocurrency thing, or when it comes to central banks, aren't they? Kind of curious. Oh, by the way, Bitcoin not doing so hot today again. What is this? The Ed Morrissey is saying about Phil the comedy. Senate power sharing plan at risk over filibuster reform that no one believes is possible? Can anyone get more inside the Beltway than the conundrum reported by Politico, with a 50-50 split in the Senate and Kamala Harris unable to take residence on Capitol Hill 24/7? Democrats and Republicans have to find a way to share power, while acknowledging control has shifted to the former. So what's the problem? Mitch McConnell wants the thin new Democratic majority to agree not to seek any more changes to the legislative filibuster, and even though Democrats don't have the votes to change it, they also don't want Chuck Schumer to agree to this demand as an offense against their majority status. I see. Yeah, the Zen is selling pretty nicely. I kind of had a little bit of a pullback. Maybe I should have done some management there, but the same on this one over here in the E-mini, it was like, well, I set a spot based on what I was seeing. They almost hit me, but I wasn't so lucky. If a predictive astrologer I listen to sometimes said if Biden postponed his inauguration by 15 minutes, everything would be better. Yeah. That's funny. No, I had a thought earlier. You know, I've been jumping around a lot lately, haven't I? I think part of it is because the funny thing is that there are some, like, if I talk about election fraud, you guys start yapping, right? And then I go to kind of switch it around and you guys are listening, but you don't seem as interested by it, right? You're going to have to look to actions, essentially. Like that's the big thing that I would look at. Let's look at actions. So here we're getting another example in Politico, right? They're not actually going to change the filibuster, but Democrats don't want to agree to not change the filibuster. Can you believe this? This is politics, friends. This is politics. That is like politics at its height. You're not going to change the filibuster, but you can't agree that you're not going to change the filibuster. Like, how ridiculous can you get? But this is what you're going to see a lot of. And what do you have to go into? Well, actions and outcomes speak louder than words, right? So here in this case, they don't have the votes to do it. Joe Manchin isn't going to vote to do it. So they can't actually do it, right? So that is probably the way we take it from here, right? You're going to get a lot of executive actions from Joe Biden, but not a lot of action on some of the larger things. Another example that we got going here is Joe Biden says we want to unify now. So if they unify, will that have an effect on the markets? Yes, it would. Yes, it would. If there's nothing but gridlock in Congress, that also has an effect on markets, one that tends to be pretty positive. Okay. So how do we suss this out? Well, actions. What are the actions? When you look at Joe Biden's actions on his first day as president, they are anything but looking for unity. They are pushing out a number of executive actions that are frankly a little bit radical. These are like far left policies, and they're doing a lot of things that the Republicans are just like, you know, diametrically opposed to. Like, not just like, oh, we think that that's a bad policy. It's like, we think that that's like the end of America as we know it. Okay. So is that what you do when you're looking for unity? No, it's not. So when we try to game that out, I think that what we're going to see is a president that pushes a far left agenda, but is unable to really do a whole lot because of gridlock in the Senate and not unity. Sure it does. None of this news or political nonsense will have anything to do with your trading today, tomorrow, or the next day. It's fodder. 3 presidents during a secular bubble. It doesn't matter. Well, if you are long and you are just managing your portfolio, it might not matter to you, true. But if you are scalping for 16 ticks, it absolutely matters. It absolutely matters. Because you're going to get a news headline that's going to come out and the market's going to react to it, and you're going to have to decide how you're going to play that. If you're going to go along with the initial move that you see in the market, or if you're going to fade it, or what you're going to do. No one wanted that big guy at 05. Oh, it seems like the difficulty that I'm having this morning at the moment, by the way, it's like I should have just chased that one. I'm not gonna. I really wish you'd. I'm never going to stop discussing politics. It's never going to happen. Because 1, it's relevant. 2, it's a really big part of how I trade. 3, like, listen, and especially now, like, here's the thing. Joe Biden is going to do things that are negative for markets. Like, that's just straight up the case. Okay? They're going to raise taxes. That's negative for negative for risk assets. Okay. To me, one of the best ways for me to promote myself is when they are doing that, is to call them out on it. And we are going to call them out on it, and we're going to trade on it when it happens. Just be careful to think, see, here's the thing. You only Democrats complain about this shit. I know you. I know you guys. You're a logical anti-corruptionist? I'm not sure what you even mean by that. Listen, I have like specific political goals that I would like to see, and that's how I base the policies and politicians that I support and don't support. But when I'm talking here, I'm much more talking about how do you interpret what's going on. I think that a lot of people don't like to hear that because they want to believe, if you want to believe just the straight headline that you get from the news media, if you're going to trade, you have to read through it. We had to do that with Donald Trump too, right? It was a good example under Donald Trump where they had a policy and it really wasn't actually a good thing. Well, during the whole, perfect example is the whole trade war thing. Okay, like a trade war is bad for markets, and it was bad for markets, and they kind of tried to sugarcoat it. Now that's a case is a little bit different because the media holds a Republican to a much higher standard than a Democrat. But if you just went off of what some of the headlines that they put out there and stuff, sometimes you made the wrong decision. And we made money, like I made money off of Donald Trump's tweets during the trade war. And it wasn't just one's personal interpretation. It's a way of looking at news that is attempting to look beyond the way that politicians have to spin things to understand what the actual impact on the market is going to be. one of the ways that you can do that, like mentally, to get you into that mode, is to actively look for the thing in what's coming out to mock. Because that immediately puts you in the position of being skeptical about what's being said and looking for the actual real effect of what's changing. Well, it looks like they're almost gonna recover this. Trying to think about like maybe where I should have bought it if I was gonna do it. By the way, as we've come back up, the treasuries have come back up, so it looks to me like that some of this move down in equities was maybe about concerns regarding interest rates. Every trading decision you make is on a personal interpret. Well, that's probably true too. I mean, I think that you're trying to use, you should be trying to use empirical evidence, but as is often the case in markets, we don't have all of the empirical evidence that we would like to really make decisions. And so in some instances, we kind of have to use our fuzzy neurons to make a little bit of inferences when we don't have all the information, right? I'm a little frustrated by this trade because I think overall I was right about all of this. It was just I was like way too early. Do you have us all? I think so. I don't really have empirical evidence to prove that. What you do with empirical evidence, you interpret it and make a decision. Yeah, and not everybody's going to interpret it in the same way. And we don't have a whole lot of empirical evidence to prove that one person's way of doing it is better than another person's way of doing it. In some cases, you might. And that's one of the bigger things is like, if you want to disagree with a particular interpretation about how it's going to, and that's the thing that I don't get, is that I'm getting like, well, I don't like what you're saying about politics, or I don't like the politics. But what I would rather you say is, I don't think that that's the way the markets are going to react because of X, Y, and Z. And then we could look down and we could say, well, now that we've both shared all of the information that we have and we still agree, maybe we have some empirical evidence about who tends to be right on that. By the way, these treasuries come all the way back. Just because you don't have empirical evidence of something doesn't mean it's true. It just means that you can't prove it. It is. How do you know? If following news was a real stat, it would be the first thing they teach green traders in trading school. It's not. I can tell you for a fact, if you go to a trading floor at Goldman Sachs, they have at the end of every desk a television with CNBC going. Every person can see and hear the whole CNBC the whole day. Everybody in the whole firm, actually, to be honest with you, even the people that aren't on the trading floor, even me in technology, there was a TV at the end of the row with CNBC on it. Okay. When there was a piece of news, all of the traders had a news squawk. It would come out. Everybody could hear it. That specific piece of news that they needed to incorporate into their trading. They use news in their trading. Now, understand that what they do is a little bit different from what we do. It could be the case that they're executing a trade for somebody. They're trying to buy a certain amount of money. And then a certain piece of news comes out that person that they're trading for expects them to just cancel the trade and not do it anymore, right? And that happens. Okay. So a little different from me trying to go short and trying to make money off of it. Okay. But they incorporate trading, and news is probably one of the best predictive signals that you can get. And there is empirical evidence, there are studies that prove this. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Lewis. That was one of those executive orders have to do with wearing masks or something. Yeah, if following news wasn't a strat, instruments wouldn't rally or collapse because of tweets. This is no. See, so here's what I think. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Blunt. But I ask myself, okay, why is Blunt saying what he is saying? Because I just said, okay, here's news and you should follow news. And he said, if following news was a real strat, it would be the first thing they teach green traders in trading school, and it's not. So why would he say that? He would say that because he believes that the correct way to trade is to only look at the market, the information generated by the market, which is what you have on your chart. Look for technical signals and trade off of that. And he believes that that is the best way for a retail trader to trade. That's why he's saying that. He's wrong, but that's why he's saying that. So do you work in the trading? I worked with traders. I was not in trading when I worked for a big bank. I know a lot of things about how they function. I didn't have firsthand experience from it. So since I didn't catch that buy there, I think I might wait until the market opens to do anything. There you go. I am not wrong, Zeth, but you may be a little bit correct with that as well. So I'm going to take that as an admission that he believes that the best way to trade is to look only at market generated information. Insider trading trumps news trading, period. It does. Well, here's the thing, Sugar Daddy. You don't have to be insider trading. There are opportunities, even opportunities that we can catch. It's very rare for me to come across information like that. But we have in many cases in the past had a piece of information that the wider market didn't have. It was public information. It wasn't insider trading, but we had information that the larger market didn't have, and we traded off of it and we made money. Happens. News is not a trading strategy. Yes, it is. There are people that make money just trading news. I can give you many examples, and you're going to see this when I release my video. I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week. I give you direct examples with broker statements where I made money trading news. Yes, and many a time when the news is the opposite of insider. Well, yeah, that's true too. That's where you kind of got to be careful, right? Because if you're going to come out, something that we will do from time to time is we'll say, okay, we just had the jobless numbers. The numbers were good, so I'm going to sell here. The treasuries are going to buy the E-mini. And the issue that you get with that is like there's going to be like this initial move, and everybody is going to trade off of those straight numbers. Those numbers, like they come in, their models, they can calculate that stuff like immediately. So it's really hard to make money off of that direct thing unless there is something really unusual about the difference in the numbers, right? Usually where the opportunity is in a more nuanced reading of those numbers. Is a better hedge. Well, what am I not hedging? Here's my argument. News is one of the most reliable edges that you can have, and it is very fertile ground for retail traders to try and develop an edge and make money. That's my statement. Especially if you're trading futures, by the way. Looks like she's going to head down too close to the... Well, I don't know, man. It's kind of pointed down, but... Let's see here. Did Brandon... Oh, Brandon took a short again. It came up and it came down onto that thing, and so he's taking it again. He might get stopped out of that one. Along with the order book you just said yesterday. Well... So because I say that news trading is some of the most fertile ground for you to find edge, that doesn't mean that you should ignore all other possible sources of edge. I think that watching the order book is a really useful skill too, and one that complements news trading very well. I think that using technical analysis to try and choose a better risk when you take the trade is really useful. Just that you got to be very careful about what the actual edge that you can gain from a purely technical signal actually is. So in most cases, major edges that you're going to get like that have already been arbitraged out of the market. You're going to be picking up on a very, very small percentage on a trade, and the execution costs of you taking that trade could make it stop working. I think for retail traders, most of us, what we can do with the news is be aware of when it comes out so we can reduce our position risk in the news. Well, I go through the different kinds of trades and I show examples of how we did it, where I can show you places where you can straight up make money, Okay, so there's the open is at 38.48.75. The first impulse appears to be long, even though we are below the open at the moment, but the volume was long. Yeah, if we can make a fair assessment of the news after it's out, we might be able to get a reasonable position to catch the following move after the news. So this is where I think that many of the technical traders kind of miss out, because part of the attitude of a technical trader is a belief in the efficient market hypothesis. They think, okay, the news came out and we moved up. That must mean that news was good for us. Okay. And the idea that the market got it wrong and it's actually bad for them and I should fade it is almost heretical to them. But I'm going to show you many examples where we did that and we made money. If you trade on news, all you do is chase. It's not necessarily, because, like I said, there are cases where I will fade. I did it here today. That one didn't work out, even though I think I had the right idea. I think I was early, but I think I had the right idea. The market was selling because of bearish statements by the ECB's Lagarde on the outlook for the economy. And I say that she's not giving us any new economic data that we didn't already have, and the market is gonna recover it. If insider trading is at the top of news trading ecosystem, what can be at the top of order flow trading? Yeah. So yeah, here's the thing with order flow trading is that I really think that the best trades that you can make with order flow are going to be too fast for people to really take advantage of. As a day trader, you are concerned about macro? Yes. Primarily, I'm concerned about macroeconomic news. Okay, press conference is over. I'll take it a step further. A lot of the indicators that I have on my chart, the way that I trade it is I wait for the thing that retail traders tend to believe is the correct way to trade that thing. Like, say, a break of the Bollinger Bands, or a move to a pivot, or whatever the thing is, and then wait for that thing to fail and trade against them when they stop out on it failing. I've intentionally done that. I haven't been doing so much of that lately, but I've found that that's a better way to trade on technicals than the actual technical edges that I tend to find. You're faster than pension funds and large investors. Well, so another instance when you get into that is on news moves. There can be pieces of news that are so big that it's simply impossible for the market to fully price in the impact of that piece of news immediately. And those are the days. Like, great example was, what was it, the May or June jobs report, when we were expecting another negative number and the number actually came out positive. And, we moved up a little bit, and then the market opened, and then we kept moving. That was a trend day. We moved up all day, and you could have bought it any time of the day, but you could have bought immediately after the news and make money. And I didn't trade that one live, but we did have successful sim trades on that move, right? And it's an easy call. You look at the number, you see what happened, and you say, oh, it's going to move all day because it's so significant, right? And because you are maybe just doing a few lots, you can get in and out wherever you want. And whereas these large funds, all of a sudden, they're like, oh, crap, we have to completely adjust our whole position based off of this. And there's no way for us to do this without moving the market. And we just have to act fast, right? And that's the place where I think you as a retail trader especially have an advantage. The problem with that particular edge is that it maybe happens once or twice a year. I'm having a discussion with you like that, and you have the temerity to think I'm a troll, and I think we already established that he's not intentionally trying to troll, didn't we? News squawk. The gripe aimed at Laguerre's reading is not a critique of reading as such. It is a critique of her inability to think on her feet and genuinely answer questions journals markets need clarification on. It suggests a lack of technical monetary policy skill. Anyway, I'm sure all of this afternoon's sources reports will answer all of the questions she dodged. This is News squawk saying that. You want to go long here, Ace? That's interesting. Like 38.46. Well, let's hold on here. We're getting a little bit of market flow selling. If they're able to hold this one, then maybe we get a pullback, but it looks like it's being rough for them at the moment. Okay. 45 from 3/4. Oh, what did he delete? Oh, it's okay. He deleted his own comment. That's fine. You broke your Wi-Fi? What? You spent all your money on Wi-Fi? Okay, well, I want to point out that today we are once again getting quite a bit of trade at individual prices. Trading, 700s, multiple prices through this area. I don't think you were rude. It's all fun. Do I seem mad? Now, if anything, I'm happy to argue about the efficacy of news-informed trading versus technical trading, right? Oh, man, it doesn't look like that one's going to work out either. Ugh. Okay, well. Treasury is moving up there. This is very curious to me, to be honest with you. Okay, so we're testing over, well, actually broke overnight lows now. Missed a little. Says some teams X nut over X time. So the issue that I would have with that is that I would have no way to verify your trading. And I'm not willing to go through all of the work of setting up like a really, legitimate trading competition. Oh man, that last downswing was ugly. I mean, we got some good favorable excursion off of that, right? It all got wiped out almost instantly. So now we're just gonna kind of have to sit on our hands for a little bit. Is this really all just because of what they said in the ECB press conference, man? Oh, okay, that was a little bit of volume there. Makes me wonder. The other thing is that I'm not necessarily going to make the claim that like I'm the most amazing trader, and I don't think that, at least at the current time, I'm not sure that I would do amazing. It's kind of all has to do with like how well I think I understand that market, At the moment, I think maybe I'm still got some things to work out for this market. Fine. Yeah, thought so. I think something that would be more interesting to me is for these people that think that they are amazing traders to post the statistics of their trading over the past year for us so that we can see. Why don't we start there first? We've looked at mine the past year. It wasn't particularly great. I had some, like I said, I went back through and I found some of the, like, that was a funny thing is that, like, when I looked back at my trading, I had made all of these amazing trades off of news, and then there was a bunch of other trades that really had nothing to do with the news and were just awful trades. But I think that if, for instance, you believe that trading purely off of a specific technical setup that you have is the best way to trade, then post your results. We'll look at it. I might find something in your results that you maybe don't consider that maybe makes them look not as good as you think that they are, but hey, that's how you learn. By the way, John, I missed you yesterday. I was like, oh, John didn't come in today. I need to keep my eyes over here. Still a lot of trade. What we're getting right now, cumulative delta-wise, still just kind of looks like maybe gasping for air. Might not necessarily be a reversal. I'd say that's a pretty good down move in volume. Oh, did my robots hit their targets, really? That's interesting. I'm surprised, to be honest. So the account is doing amazing today. In fact, I think that the winners that they made off of this cancel out the bad trading from earlier in the week on the robots. Okay, this one I think is working out a little better. Oh, you wanted to watch the inauguration without listening to any negative. I didn't even watch it. Well, I think that the inauguration happened after we stopped, but... Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. There's a webinar today that I want to watch, and it's going to be here during the stream, so I'm just going to kind of be listening to it in the background, and I might not be talking as much. Yeah, but I'm going to turn this on right here. If you haven't signed up for it, you can go to the Jigsaw Trading Twitter account, and they have links, but he's going to be doing a webinar today on Zoom. So we're just going to listen. I'm going to listen to it in the background. Okay, so yeah, you can't hear it. So I'm not going to talk about it or hear it, but if I'm quiet, that's why. And for now, Can I mute him for a second? I guess not. Some of it actually brought you to tears of relief. Yeah. So I remember watching Donald Trump's inauguration. Not because I thought that anything significant was going to happen, but I was genuinely curious about what his speech would be like. With Joe Biden, I was almost 100% certain what it would be like, and going back and reading the news reports on it, I would say that it was pretty much in line. But it is one of those things where inauguration speeches in particular are tried to be geared to hit at you emotionally. Oh, you went long, Ace? 41. So you did stock it the whole time. But how are you justifying a long? I want to know. I mean, I've been going long. I've failed it 3 times now, but no justification. That's weird. It's weird. So we can chalk it up to this is one of those things that you can't necessarily explain. Okay, well, we are getting an orange bar here. I was thinking maybe we're going to get a pivot here, but it doesn't look like it's going to do it here. Nope. I remember when they were comparing attendance of the Trump inauguration to Obama's. I thought that maybe they would try and do comparisons with that by having a lot of people watching online, but it kind of looks like even though they promoted it a lot, that not a lot of people really watched it. At least the views on the YouTube videos weren't very high. So here's another thing I find interesting. This is kind of more just about people's attention, but there's been a lot of news about his day one presidential orders, right? And when I say a lot of news, I mean like there's a lot of information to put out, and I've seen the news companies put out a lot of individual stories about it. But you'll notice that the population doesn't really care about them so much. And in particular, they're not really interested in debating them. It's like if you look at the Democrat side and the narratives that they're pushing on Reddit this morning, they're almost all like personality attacks, and they're almost actively avoiding having a intellectual discussion on the policies themselves. So one in particular, for instance, that I think there's a good argument against is Joe Biden halting construction on the border wall. And the reason is there's nothing harmful about building the wall, and the contractors have already been paid. So if they've already been paid, why wouldn't you just let them do the work that they've paid for? But they don't want to talk about it. Okay. So we just took another little hit of sell volume. It looks like it they held that one a little bit better than the past ones. Let's see what happens. I would need evidence that the contractors have already been paid for work not completed. Yeah, sure. Let's look that up, because when I looked it up at first, I wasn't sure if it was confirmed. We can't do it on Google. I don't think I'm going to find a story specifically about that, but it was a note in some of the stories that I saw. And I can't do the Washington Post, screw them. Paywall. Yeah, it's going to take more research than I have time for at the moment to find it. Well, just because I read something in the news and I remember it and I can't find it at the moment doesn't mean that there's no evidence, but I would I would be cautious about making that kind of an argument with me, because you know that I don't just pull shit out of nowhere, right? Why are you short ZN? I was short ZN because the market was long and because the jobs numbers were good. Looks like I don't really understand what's going on today, though. These people that I'm listening, so the webinar that I'm watching, there's going to be Jigsaw is going to be on, Peter Davies is going to be on, but it's like a big conference, so there's other people doing their presentation, and I find this guy I don't want to listen to him. But you'll understand why I'll withhold belief until you've read. Sure. Here would be a better attitude, Ace. That sounds interesting. Maybe I will go and research to find where he might have gotten that from. But that's like a hell search for you. Maybe if I search for... The issue I'm having at the moment is that the same Washington Post article keeps popping up for me, and it's you can't read it because it's the Washington Post. The burden of proof is on the person who makes the claim, sure, but that's like a really lazy attitude. Like, do you understand that if you take that attitude, that you will always be stuck in your own biases and limits on information? Right? If I sound upset, it's because I'm upset because I don't 100% understand why the flow is working the way it is. No, but we're not talking about accepting a belief or not. We're talking about what is a necessary piece of information for you to go and do more research on something. And if you set the bar yay high, the result is that you're never going to know what you don't know. Right? That is a recipe for you to get stuck in your own bubble of information. Right? So like the assumption is if a piece of direct evidence is not provided when somebody says something, then it's automatically false unless they can show me that that's not the case. And I'm not going to do any research on my own about that, even though I've found a contradicting claim. And if you always do that, then the end result is going to be in most cases that that there's going to be a large amount of information that you're never going to see. So you want me to chase down every rumor that is widespread? I think that there is, if it is a subject that is of interest to you or is pertinent to what you are doing, that it would do you some good to do that investigation, yes. Then no, I don't know if I would. Again, it's not an issue of do you believe it or not. It's a question of do I decide to investigate it or not. And I'm saying that your threshold to investigate something is too high. Well, it looks like they did get that slightly higher low. Maybe if I just search for the last 24 hours. You don't have a threshold to investigate something. I just take the null position until some evidence is presented. But you're saying that you would never. What you're saying is that if I don't go and find the story for you, you are never going to know. And sorry, holy crap, these people talking in my head in the earphone are fucking annoying. When trying to have this conversation, they're so loud. Blah blah blah. Yeah. Jeez. No, I turned you off. I still hear you. Device. There. Okay. What you're saying is that if the claim that I'm making is true, but I don't provide you any evidence for it, you will never know, even though if you did your own search, you would probably find the information and see that it is true. That's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that if you do that all the time, there's probably going to be a lot of things that you never see the information for. And it will lead to a belief about the world that is incorrect simply because you don't have much curiosity about it. You're totally missing the point. You don't take a position that's false. You take a position that you're not convinced is true. No, that's not what you're saying, though. Because my issue isn't that you said, well, I don't believe you. There is kind of this sort of thing where it's like if somebody tells you something and you choose to believe that piece of information or you don't, right? Like, do you understand? Okay. There's an issue with that too, but that's not the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is that you're saying I'm not going to research it. That's the thing that I take issue with. And what I'm saying is that if you are interested enough in the subject to argue with me about it, you should be interested enough in the subject to go and research it for yourself and see if that claim is true or not. Yeah, let me try and find this. Where I'm trying to find it, so I'm not finding it from a Google search, so now I'm kind of like, I have to go and find where it was. It's kind of difficult because you're not going to get a story just about halting the border wall construction. Or at least it looks like only one outlet really wrote an article like that. You see, this is the whole point. You said, no, you brought it up. I'm not going to take on the burden of proof. The person who makes the claim has the burden of proof. So here's the thing. If you don't care, then it's not really a subject that's of interest to you. So why should I even spend the time? Like, you get what I mean? Like, if this is something that requires a significant amount of time for me to research and find just because it's not a common piece of information or it's difficult to find, you're asking me to put in a significant amount of work for something that you don't actually care about anyways. So here's where it comes down to, okay, the only motivation that I have now to go and research this piece of information is to make you look like a fucking idiot because you just don't want to go and, find information that maybe contradicts what you believe. Do you get what I mean? Do you see the issue here? So then I'm saying, if you do that all the time, think about all of the knowledge and information that you will never get simply because you don't want to look. Well, you are asking me to put in a work for a belief that you have. Why would I want to do that? That exactly the point. It seems to me that if I go and I find this piece of information and present it to you, that you're going to say, oh, okay, interesting, and then just go on with your life and it's not going to matter. So you don't actually care. You don't actually care that, actually, this presidential order that Joe Biden is making doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's like, now I have to be later than that. What reaction would make you happy for me to have? Well, I think that you would sit down. So in this instance, I think that you would say, okay, first of all, that's true. Second of all, he shouldn't have done that executive action because he is basically doing something that, canceling something that we already paid for. And then two would be, a question about what his motivation is for doing that. Right? So, like, here's the thing. You're saying something contradictory, right? You're saying, I don't believe it because you're not presenting the evidence. And I'm asking, why are you holding out on that particular thing so much? It must be because you have a belief that contradicts that piece of information. Otherwise, why wouldn't you just say, oh yeah, Seth, he tends to do his research and he knows what he's talking about. because you don't ask for proof about absolutely everything that's ever said. I have gone through and done your strategy and written a program about it and shown you the results, and it says that there's issues with it all over a long enough time frame, right? That's like not a, and you don't sit down and say, okay, now I have to look at the code and all of these things and this and that, right? That's what I'm saying. You're putting different burdens of proof on different things for and why. And the only answer is that because you don't want to question your own beliefs in certain instances. And that's why I'm saying that if you really want to be a person that's curious and learns a lot about the world, then the sensible approach to take is if somebody brings up a claim that contradicts your beliefs and is a belief that is of a particular interest or significance to you, that you should do the research regardless of what the person says. Otherwise, there will be a significant wealth of information that you never get. And that's what I'm saying. And I'm just going to hold this. So you say, I disagree if someone brings up a claim without evidence. Well, I guess I'm not saying that you have to do it, but I'm just going to say, realize that because of your attitude, that there's going to be a lot of information that you never come across. Because you're not actively challenging your own beliefs. Okay. Okay, here we are. There's our source is Mark Morgan, who is this CBP. Okay, the Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan warned that canceling projects at this point would cost the U.S. taxpayer. It will cost taxpayers billions of dollars in settlement fees, he said. We're going to walk away from areas of the wall that have already been constructed. So, you're wrong, first of all. And number two is the question is that I have for you is, okay, how many other pieces of information do you have that is wrong and you're never going to know because you don't sufficiently challenge your own beliefs? Yes, it does. Here's the other one where they're saying, Biden also signed an executive order to stop construction of the border wall ordered under President Trump, even as Fox News reported that the contract with the construction company was already paid out. Okay, here's this article that says specifically that it was already paid out. So then I went and I searched for the Fox story, and there was the commissioner of the border wall construction, that Okay, the guy in the government that's in charge of this is saying that this executive order is actually going to cost taxpayers more money. And the whole reason to not build the wall is because they believe that it's expensive and it doesn't do anything. And so then we cancel it and it costs us more money to cancel it. Then you have to wonder, okay, that's not actually why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want people to come across the border. Admit it. Admit it. Holy shit, man, you crazy. But I am crazy. There it is right there. I have it highlighted on, look at the screen, Ace. I have it highlighted on the page. The contract with the construction company was already paid out. Here's the link for the page. It's too long. The link itself is too long to paste. That's fucking hilarious. That is a report of a report. It's Fox News reported the contract with the construction company was already paid out. Well, so this story I think is not actually the report that they're talking about. Let's see. I'll pull that one back up again. Let's see if we can get one even more recent. This is even, no, that's before. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's weird. That doesn't help at all. Okay, but there's two. I don't think there really is a difference. It says there's a difference between settlement fees and being paid for work not done. Why? It costs the taxpayer money either way. Now what you're doing is you're just arguing on trivial points to try and feel like you were right when you weren't. It's not. The taxpayer still loses money either way, dude. To the person making the decision, read Joe Biden. It does. There's no difference. The point is that Joe Biden's decision costs the taxpayer more money. So it's looking okay now. Okay, I will agree that shutting down construction will have fees associated with it. Yes. Now, why am I picking on this particular thing? Do you like I'm asking you guys a direct question. Why do you think I'm picking on this particular point so hard? Because Ace likes Arab men. No, that's not why. Because you're a Republican, that's not why. Because you want the person who makes the claim to never back it up, and instead all the people who hear it to have to scurry and go and look for evidence? Wrong. Okay, so listen. I went and I found the piece of information for you. I knew that it was going to be a little bit difficult to find that from a search engine, right? It took me a little bit, right? But I don't just pull shit out of my ass. Have I ever told you guys something that was like objectively, when was the time that I told you something objectively untrue and then we went and we found a news source that could directly contradicted the claim and I was wrong? Does that ever happen? I'm a little bit miffed that you don't trust me to provide you information. But here's the thing. No point did you prevent evidence. I did. I presented a news article that it states that it has been reported that Fox News reported that the contract with the construction company was already paid out. So now you're saying, well, I don't believe that news source that she posted is what you're really saying. So then we can go back and we can search for Fox News to find the direct story that they're talking about. But this one that they're talking about was before he did it, actually. This story is from the 9th. Anyways, here's why it matters, guys. Listen very carefully. What do we do? How do you make money trading? You just take random exits and hope that it works out? No. You have to have an informational advantage. That is how markets work. You have information. That information is transferred into trades, and those trades have an impact on the market. The net impact of everybody's information being turned into trades determines the price of the asset. In reality, the commodity that we are really functioning off of is information. And information has energy in the form of orders that push the market. Okay? So, if that is our job, then the question that you should have, how do I get better at trading? Answer, get better at finding information. Now, how can you get better at finding information? Well, I'll tell you. One of the things that is going to help you the most is actively searching for information that contradicts what you think. So, if you have a belief about the market, for instance, I believe that head and shoulders pattern is an effective predictor of future price. You should go out there and do research about that particular thing and search for information that verifies or unverifies that piece of information. And then you will go on Google and you will search for the scholarly articles, and you will find the scholarly article that the Federal Reserve wrote that says that this pattern doesn't really have a very predictive value. And then you would go, oh, maybe that's not really what I thought it was. I shouldn't trade off of that. Now do you see? Now do you see how this is actually a useful skill? But here's the thing. People don't like doing that. They don't like doing that, do they? They want to say, well, I think what I think, and I'm going to continue thinking what I think, regardless of what other people say, unless they so thoroughly embarrass me that my ego can no longer handle it, and I have to admit that I'm wrong. No. If you want to be a good trader, you have to be the kind of person that's going to say, I'm going to go and find out what the reality is and incorporate it into my trading, regardless of, how I feel about it. And that means that, yeah, sometimes you're going to go and do research on things that you don't really want to research. But you kind of have to, because it's directly relevant to what you're doing. Right? The question is, How do you become a person that comes across more information than other traders? Because that's really what it comes down to. So you're going to have an edge. You have to know more about what is going to happen in the markets than other traders. How do you develop that edge? You have to be curious. You have to challenge your ideas. You have to do a lot of research. And yeah, if somebody comes in and they say something and they don't provide direct evidence for what they said, but it's irrelevant to you, then you should research it anyways. That's the point. Fair enough? Are we all on the same page, or do I need to keep going? Because, I mean, this is just going to run. I can just sit here all day. There's a lot of market sell orders. Well, I'm finding that even though we're moving up, it's kind of slow, so... So you're saying that the key to being a better trader is to spend your day reading obscure articles on Fox News. Well, I think that one of the keys is to read a lot of obscure articles, yes. Fox News is probably not going to be the most common source that you're going to find edges in. But yeah, you should read a lot of news. Give it to him, Seth. I mean, Ace and I are really good friends, and I wouldn't harp on him that hard if I didn't think that he could handle it. I should say though, if like all you do is read CNN and you don't ever read Fox News, then there's going to be a problem, because there is a lot of information that you will only find on Fox. So Peter Davies in this webinar is talking about how the different types of players in the markets and what kind of effects they have on markets. And he's saying, you know, if we have a move up and then it comes back to the original price, do hedgers react to that? No, they don't. That doesn't make sense. The people that react to that are like the day traders. And so I think he's setting up the setup to say, okay, when it trends versus range bound, that is largely has to do with how the day traders have to react to the price movements. There's some pretty big absorption up in here, isn't there? I get my news from either CNN or Fox. I have no particular bias towards either, but I live in Canada, so I look to more local sources for my news. You know, I think that what are the best news sources for day traders to look at is an interesting topic, and I've been researching on it quite a bit, but I haven't been able to make a conclusion on where you should really read. I think that CNBC is one that you should check on, but I don't think that they're necessarily the place where you're going to find edges. I know that I've found edges from reading Zero Hedge, but there's also a lot of bullshit on Zero Hedge. And you know, you have to be somebody that's really able to decipher what matters and what doesn't matter if you're going to read Zero Hedge, you know. I don't have the volume profile robot on, to be honest. Do you guys want the volume profile robot on? I mean, like, I've done the back testing on it and it doesn't work very well. Reuters is a good source. I follow Reuters and BBC. And also a few business records from the Globe and Mail. You know what's the one source that I'm always really impressed when I get an article from them is the Financial Times. I've been tempted many times to get a subscription to the Financial Times. I canceled my subscription to Zero Hedge because I didn't really feel like I was getting my money's worth from them. Even though I still read them regularly. But I'm not giving them money out of the goodness of my heart or because I'm appreciative, you know. I didn't change. So the thing I'm going to do with Super Trend is I'm going to try combining it with the Fourier. I haven't done that yet. Financial Times reported the National Poster Conrad Black's newspaper. I really feel like that there could be more news sources directed at day traders. I think that could be a thing, but... Yeah. So Peter Davies is showing, okay, what if we do the volume profile? Well, it doesn't tell you it's something that you don't already know. Yeah, it's in a range. Good job. You can see that on the chart too. Sure. But the question is, how do you know when it's switched? I'd say so far he's doing a good job, but he's giving me information that I already know. So I'm hoping there's some real meat here. I think he's going to give me some good stuff here. I'm thinking back to my conversation with Ace now, and I'm like saying, because you're not sufficiently challenging your personal biases. But then I know he must be thinking, yes, but there are certain personal biases that you might have that you don't sufficiently search for countering information, which is true. There are some things like, particularly with religion, I've looked at and received a lot of information that is like, but I just don't care because that's not a subject that I'm interested in I don't think it has a net effect on anything. Certainly on politics, I'm always... Although it makes it difficult because once you start really getting into politics, there's a lot of instances where you just find that you just can't know because there's too much conflicting information. I'm looking at this range and it's like not as big as I thought it was. The volatility is really contracted. I watch the cryptocurrency markets. I have views on the cryptocurrency markets, but I don't recommend day trading the cryptocurrency markets. Yeah, he's right. I honestly thought that it would be harder to manipulate the price once Bitcoin was priced as high, but the price can still drop $1,000 within 3 minutes as it did today, says Tash. Yeah, well, the thing is, Tash, is that the liquidity in Bitcoin is really not as high as it appears. And that's one of the really big issues is there's a lot of talk about like how much institutional money is coming in and things like that. But the reality is that Bitcoin is still not a mature market at all. And so it is quite vulnerable to manipulation. And even if the large institutions do come in, I think that there's still going to be cases where certain players have so much Bitcoin and control over the price that their moves are still going to matter more than anything else. I really wonder about the treasure. I mean, I should have taken profits down here, I guess, but there's been more than that. Like they're up at the highs today now, and I'm kind of wondering where the demand is coming from. Felt the anchored BVO.
Block sell.
Well, there was a really big sell there at 27.5. 3860? Do you think DXY is inverse correlated with the price of Bitcoin? It can be. It has been lately. I have to say that there have been times where that correlation would be really important and it failed on you, though. So I wouldn't be 100% relying on that. Oh, that's some good buying there. Look at that stack. Yeah. You're right, Dixie is pretty low now, but Bitcoin as well. Well, I mean, the correlation that you're going to look for is going to be more on a longer term chart anyways. But I think the reason though why they've been correlated is because a lot of the price up in Bitcoin has been because speculators are making a speculation about the value of the dollar. I think that there's some issues with that speculation, but so the things that Peter is talking about, some stuff that is directly pertinent to some of the stuff that we've been doing lately. He's got this thing right here. Look at this. I don't know if you can see it, but this is exactly what we were talking about yesterday. The volume profile there. Do you see it? Sellers, buyers. Buyer side is a lot bigger though. Yeah. My antivirus is slowing down. Can I shut it down when I mean, I guess. If it's really slowing down your trading, you either need a new computer or you've got to look at, you might have something else going on in your machine. Boomer. I'm a little concerned about this. Hmm. I'm noticing, it's pretty rangy in here, but look at the volume. I think that we probably got another good 5-10 minutes here in this range. Treasuries are pushing up though. I'm kind of wondering if I should just get out of this one because I'm not really paying attention to it, and I clearly missed the trade. Another thing when you were saying my virus is slowing things down is, do you have Gmail open? If you have Gmail open, I would close it. Hmm. I've got a box drawn between 47 and 50. Well, what I see in the S&P 500 is this same pattern that we tend to see, where the first bit of the open, there's some selling, and then they build out a position, and then you start to get these crazy trends on the upside. And we've had one buy up. Typically, what we should see then is a leveling off of activity, which we're definitely seeing, even though the trend is still intact, and then a further move up. But we should note that there was some spots of significant volume out here in the 3852 area, and it developed a range in there. Mm-hmm. So Peter Davies is making an interesting case here on volume profile, because he's basically saying, if you saw volume yesterday at a certain price, why is that going to be relevant to you today? Because those people aren't still holding their positions. The majority of people don't, which is true. Higher time frame players maybe, but I think he does, even though I think that there is some efficacy in watching the profiles. See, what is the driver in the treasury? These last moves up haven't necessarily been on a lot of volume. Look at this chart over here. So it's net selling, and now here we've moved up, even though the net volume is down in the 10-year. So let's look at the other ones here now. The 5-year is a little bit more even, and the 30-year is a little bit more, showing a little bit more volume there. There was a change in the spreads, so there must be some mean reversion in the spreads going on here. I think, though, the amount of volume that we're seeing, like 41, 4K at 29, is not... I'm not, clearly not in the know. So I'll take it off. That might be a spot where it turns back down, though. Just so that I don't look too stupid when it goes back down to the lows of the day. Oh, they have 20-minute consultancies? I don't know. Sorry, I know I'm not talking as much because I'm still listening to Peter, but I'm really curious what's going on in the treasury here. I suppose it could have something to do with the auction in 30 minutes. They must, maybe they're getting something. Well, as they're moving the dollar is definitely moving down today. Well, it's hard to hear some of these stories that Peter talks about where he's met people that have been trading 20 years and are still losing money. There was a few ticks up there. Like, here's the thing: is like, look at this. This is we are getting some odd behavior today. So here again, the delta is almost exclusively long. I'm not so sure I read this necessarily as strong disagreement, but there does appear to be some people that are buying up and through here, aggressive buying up through here, and some passive selling through that area. And so I think that we're just gonna maybe start moving here in a bit. We'll see if they break up or not. Gonna turn this off now. I don't have to listen to that. Oh my gosh, quiet. I understand how where when I'm having an argument with some of you guys that it can get on you a little bit. I totally feel you, and I apologize when I do that. I'm if I do one of those and I don't really have like an end point for you guys to gain from it, then, feel free to, tell me I'm stupid. but, oh man. Okay, so I'm just look at the treasuries, man. Yeah, this is a really odd, like, okay. So I'm actually seeing some real sell volume in the 10-year, in fact. I mean, I guess there's that 27.96 now. Now I'm starting to get some aggressive buying up into here. But for the most part, a lot of this ticking. Well, so like look at this area, for instance, right here. 12,800, 651 on the last tick up at 26.5. And it popped right up through there. So it's like, for whatever reason, the treasuries wanted to move up. Now we have some auctions, so that I suppose that is one key driver that we're going to have in the treasuries. There must be more sources of demand than I realize. There has been this thing going on where the Chinese dumped a ton of liquidity into the markets. So it's that time of year. So it may just be that a lot of people need the liquidity to support their operations because they're doing end of year tax stuff and all that sort of a thing. But overall, I'd say in the treasury that because of that, I don't really have a very good idea of where it's going to go. And then, I wasn't really paying attention. I haven't been taking my treasury trades very seriously, but I think that I should have, taken that off somewhere in there. Like maybe just at the break even, but it's kind of sad to see me get 7 ticks and then not take it. I thought you were short. No, short in the ES? Well, I was short in the treasury, yes. I was short from, I don't even remember now. Where was I short from? 70. I was short from 70. So I didn't really get a good price on it to begin with, but it's just kind of sad to watch it will come back up like that so fast, Oh, you're talking about Blunt. Of course. Good call on the stopping up here. Yeah. Well, I only brought that up because Peter was talking about it, because it was something that I noticed in this. I've always noticed, but this week because of some information that I read about what causes this phenomenon, I have been paying more attention to it. But basically, like, why does this range develop? And Peter was talking about it, and he was saying, well, when people see these ranges, they always say, this is price agreement. And he says, no, that's like, there's people buying it here and then there's people selling it here. And that's not necessarily price agreement unless you're agreed with yourself. And I think he's got a good point. So I look at it as like, there is some disagreement in the market. Like, keep in mind that there was like all of that selling from the ECB comments and all of that, right? And then on the open, there was some strong selling. I mean, they pushed it against us for a long time. And then we come up, there's some buying, and there's like about a 10-minute period of buying, and then it just kind of tapers off. So that says to me that like the day traders are in disagreement. The large player comes in, buys it, he takes off the gas pedal, but then this whole time you getting this. So probably the buy program is still on. And at some point, I think that we'll probably get another measured move here, like another 10 minutes of it pushing up. Pelosi says she will talk to the managers about when to send the impeachment articles to the Senate. He sent them on their way to the Capitol, she said of Trump. They informed us that they are ready to proceed, Pelosi says. So I have been thinking about this impeachment thing a little bit the past day. And I remember telling you guys that I don't think that they're actually going to be able to impeach him. Oh no, that's not the big thing that I was thinking about, though. I also remember telling you guys, though, that I really don't think that Donald Trump has the political capital to run for office again. And that I really didn't think that he was going to run again. Like, he's just so old. And I think about that, and it really does seem to me that from a prudent and logistical point of view, that it's just not very realistic for Donald Trump to run for office again. But as he's leaving the White House, there's been a lot of noise about that he'll start another political party, right? And so now I'm kind of starting to reconsider that. I'm thinking, will he try and run again? It seems like that at the moment he really wants to. And so then the impeachment becomes a thing because of that, right? Which I really don't think is a good precedent to set. I think that you need to have high crimes and misdemeanors, and free speech is not a high crime and misdemeanor. I'm really concerned about the precedent you set if you impeach him, and also impeaching him after he's out of office is kind of, and even more so what it's going to do to the Republican Party, because if these Republican senators really do vote for it, the party is finished. Like, it is just so done. Right. Yeah. You mean the third party. Yeah. It really seems, I mean, I don't know how serious that is. The issue is that you will often get, okay, so we just had a little bit of adverse excursion here. Anyways, the thing is he's one of those people that, you go to you're talking with them and they're like, oh yeah, we should get together sometime. Let's have this huge party. Yeah. And then, it never happens. He's kind of one of those people that the implementation is lacking sometimes. So the only thing that I see coming from my news squawks is this impeachment, Pelosi talking about impeachment. So yeah, I don't know if this excursion that we're getting is a big deal or not. And I also would say that given the range that we had, it wouldn't surprise me to see like some head fakes, like to see the sellers come in and decide to make their move and sell it, and then have the buy program still be on and buy it up. But I don't know if I have a really good, any one particular really good piece of information that would tell us what it's going to do, other than that I got two of these robots long and looking for the YOLO. Trump will become the new Kennedy for the right? I don't know. I mean, it would be one thing if he started a third party and then he didn't run. But yeah, I think that you're getting, so this move right here, there was something to that, right? It looks like there was quite a bit of market makers not really pushing against it. Is kind of the curious thing about that, and it happened really quickly, right? So now this one is maybe autocorrelation. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing is the amount of treasuries to sell here. 60 billion in 2-year notes, 61 billion in 5-year notes, 62 billion in 7-year notes. And the treasuries are still just like pushing up. Okay, well, here's the open. So we're going to have like, what, 3846 of you up? Is your HD face slowing my Wi-Fi? No. I would really, really not recommend day trading on Wi-Fi, though. Like, honestly, that's going to be your packet loss, right? Like, this is a thing you got to remember about Wi-Fi. When you're watching video, you might not notice it because it comes to you in chunks. But when you're doing something that has anything to do with latency, then you start noticing the packet loss. And it's a very... I would really highly recommend not trading on Wi-Fi. I'm on Wi-Fi, it gets choppy sometimes. Yeah, I mean, you're just, it's unavoidable. It's just a part of the technology. Somebody calling me here? What was that? No? Oh, I guess they were. Some number I've never seen before. Probably a spammer. Jill Biden's inauguration gown was inspired by unity. I'm not even going to show me oh, it's a white coat. Okay. So I'm starting to see the tape. The pace of the tape is not that they're below the open. I think that you're getting a little bit more pushback from the buyers now at this point. And just note that even though we came down here significantly, that it wasn't from market orders per se. Like, I mean, yes, the cumulative delta did go down, but the amount that it went down wasn't like hyper significant. This could be more of a like, maybe there's a buy program going on up here, and that's why that delta was buy all through this area. And there's somebody else that just wants to be short the market, so he sold it. And then that buying program turned off, and maybe that's why we came back. That call was probably from your stop the stills. I've never been called by them. Oh, no, wait, I take that back. I got called by them once. When they wanted me to go down to Arizona and go door to door, which was not something I could do. A very high delta with lateral movement equals big absorption. Yeah. I mean, the caveat that I would put on that is that this right here, this trajectory isn't a huge move. I mean, well, okay. It's 6,000 contracts. 6,000 contracts is nothing to scoff at. But over that long of a period of time, it's not, you know, it's not excessive. So it's kind of like if it was algorithms and absorption and stuff, it could be. We just have to realize that it was a subtle thing that was going on. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it kind of also goes back to this bigger question, right? Which was the market reaction to the ECB president's comments at the beginning of her speech that caused the sell-off before the market, and then I think may have been a part of why we saw the sell-off off of the open, was that market overreacting to that. And is that why they wanted to sell up there? I don't know. Okay, so we did finally see the treasuries maybe back off of this a little bit. Something else I find curious here is that, you know, the treasuries continue to stay high. So when I look at that, I'm like, oh, maybe they know something. But then they're not really correlated at all. They're not. They both seem to be doing their own thing. Also, another thing. So look at this volume at 29, man. Look at the volume compared to the other two prices around it. That's a lot. If that's the case, though, like we were saying before, it looks like that at the moment they're just kind of stuck in that range. Yeah. See, there's the the sellers trying to make that move happen again, and the buyers are supporting it for now. Well, we got about 15 minutes left here. No, what was that? What was I saying that we're saying? But then you realize there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud, so that is good. Yeah. See, this is a great example of one of those things where I'm like, somebody might say something that is generally true, but like I feel like that there's more nuance to it, right? I don't think that anybody's met an evidentiary standard to prove that the outcome of the election was changed by voter fraud. I think would be a more accurate thing to say, right? Just like I don't think that anybody ever proved that interference in the election changed the outcome of the election in, 4 years ago. Well, that didn't stop Democrats from yapping about it for 4 years. But it didn't mean that there was not any fraud, or not even that there wasn't widespread voter fraud. I would say I don't think that there was organized voter fraud. But I do think that you could probably, stitch together individual discrepancies, and together they could probably be a pretty significant number of votes. But they didn't really go into it. Is that nuance? I don't know. Like, it's just the market rewards the nuance, right? It's like the apple red? You say, well, yeah, apple is red, and I could prove that objectively by taking a picture of it and taking it into Photoshop and reading the color readings. But then the reality is that there's a number of colors on an apple, right? There's some areas that could be yellow. The stem is brown, right? And the market rewards seeing that kind of nuance, because the obvious thing, the market is usually already, factored that in, the obvious thing. So you got to look to the less obvious things. Gurus take $1,000 risk to make $700 as usual today. 87 opportunities in court to present evidence. So you have to realize, Blunt, though, that the vast majority of those were not thrown out of court because of the not meeting the minimum legal standards, but in probably 80% of the cases, they were tossed out because the people didn't have standing. This is particularly true of the challenges to the law changes, because here is a case where there were changes made to voting laws and procedures that were, in my opinion, unconstitutional and should be challengeable, but then the court said that nobody had any standing to challenge it, which is kind of funky. I don't know how you square that one away, but that's what happened. That's what happened. So I wouldn't cite that as evidence that like they looked and they did everything they could to find it and they didn't find it. That just wasn't the case. People found statistical errors from information that was available to the public and tried to get courts to force people to look into it more, and they didn't have standing in most of the cases, and so nothing came of it. There could have been a more thorough investigation. Yes, there could have. What I don't understand is why did we have to have such a thorough investigation for the whole Russia hoax thing, but not for the voter fraud? It's just, I don't think that it was fair. There's a double standard. Somebody in the media says that Russia interfered with the election, and so Congress has to have a whole 4-year investigation on it. They turn over every possible stone you possibly can and did every possible legal maneuver and made the Trump administration's life a pure hell for 4 years over nothing. They found literally fucking nothing. And then we come over and we provide all of this statistical evidence and names of people that they claim voted illegally and so forth, and they can't get anybody to really investigate it seriously. I'm not gonna stop. It's the fucking truth. It is the fucking truth. Don't watch if you don't want to hear that stuff. Straight up, I'm telling you. If you don't want to hear Seth's political views, don't watch my stream, because I like talking about it and it's a significant part of the stream. Is CME charging sales tax? What? I'm not sure what you mean by that. They charge commissions. Or are you talking about the whole trading tax that the Democrats want? That's not going to happen. But Biden's a dope. Well, God knows I'm not here for the trading advice. Have you thought about starting a political YouTube channel? I mean, I did, but it was just the thing that I found was that the purely political audience wasn't really worth a whole lot. I don't know. I didn't find it rewarding when I did that stuff. I have often found it rewarding doing it here on stream, though. Just because, like this is where I'm a little frustrated with you guys today. I don't want to be like, oh, I hate my audience, and but just hear me out here, okay? Because I'm trying to tell you guys something that I think is important, right? What was the point of that? The point of that wasn't that there was no widespread evidence of voter fraud. The point of that is that you can explain things about what is going on in the world with a lot of nuance, right? Blunt says that there were 87 opportunities in court to present evidence. There was 87 opportunities in court. Many of those had evidence attached to them. The vast majority of them were thrown out on standing grounds. So does that mean that the evidence was presented to the court? It was not. Why does that matter? Well, I guess it really doesn't. It's just an example of a situation where there's nuance. You're making a statement that's a little bit too general. And I know that we like to go into nuance. I know that the human brain doesn't like to go into that. My brain does because I'm on drugs, but the normal person doesn't want to say that. The normal person wants to say, well, I don't think that there was voter fraud and I think that Joe Biden should be president. And so, I'm going to look for the piece of information that I think is the most convincing to people to show that he legitimately won, right? But we're not making that case. The case that we're making is that we want to understand the world as effectively about how it actually is so that we can make a really sophisticated interpretation of what the impact on the markets will be that the majority of people out there can't make. In order to do that, you have to understand nuance and you have to search for it. Regardless of impact, they simply had nothing impactful. Well, that might... I'm not going to say that that's like a factual statement, but I think that that's a legitimate opinion, and I think that you're probably right. Why are you still talking to NPCs? So here's my challenge to you guys that argue with me about that. Provide a piece of information. I'm not saying like do it right now, but I'm saying provide us a piece of nuance, information about something going on in the world, hopefully something that would be relevant to our trading, that would give us a better insight into the true nature of a situation than what the average person has. Any reason why? Listen, there are a lot of very rational people out there that believe that there was voter fraud. So if you want to go back to that one, I'll just give you an example. In Georgia, Republicans went down the list of voter rolls, and they found several thousand people, I believe, who were listed on voting rolls that had died that year, and that showed that they had voted. They went with a computer and they said, okay, these are all the people with obituaries, and here's it showing them voting. So they presented that information to the secretary in Georgia. And the secretary in Georgia said, oh no, the information that you have is incorrect. Those people did not vote illegally. And then they said, okay, provide us the data to show us that we're wrong. And the secretary of Georgia said no. So at that point, is it irrational to believe that some of those people voted for dead people? I don't think it's irrational at all, because you have a piece of evidence that suggests that it could be, that wasn't falsified with evidence. We're basically relying on the word of an expert for it, which is okay, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying that it's wrong to believe something if an expert says something, but I'm also saying if you have conflicting evidence and you want to make the argument about it, I would understand why somebody would still believe that. You know what I mean? Number of something who believe in something that strongly has no bearing on whether it's true or not. Sure. RJ, well, there are statistical anomalies that bear some investigation. I agree. Let me rephrase that for you. I think that there are statistical anomalies that justify more investigation than what was done. Like, why can't we have the same level of investigation as they had for the Russia investigation? Come on. Why not? Here's my theory on why not. I don't know if this really matters, but I think some of you guys might enjoy this. I think that Democrats are chronically Is that the right word? Yeah. I think that Democrats are chronically obsessed with perceptions. That makes sense. So, when I look at like the news, for instance, you see something on the news, Democrats tend to say, "Oh yes, I agree. I believe what is on the news." Oh, they took off at the session close, even though I've still got 20 seconds. That's curious. Anyways, they tend to go along with what the news is, and the Republicans are more prone at the current time to say that the news doesn't present the information fairly, right? So if you are a political operative and you are trying to craft a story to influence the public, your job is a lot easier as a Democrat than it is as a Republican. Republicans tend to reject whatever it is that you're telling, but those kinds of tactics seem to be more effective on the Democrat population, at least right now, right? And I think that Democrats overall realize this. And that's why they're always talking about perception. They're, like, oh, you know what, guys, when we called it defund the police, that made us look bad. It's not that our idea is bad. It's not like the idea of giving police less funds and money will result in higher crime rates. No, we just need to call it something different and the public will support it, which probably isn't true. I think that no matter what, the public is probably going to not support their local police forces from being funded as much. The majority of Americans, at least, from the polling, last time I saw polling on it, at least. So I think that they're constantly on this perceptions thing, right? And so from their point of view, simply investigating something, kind of, what is the word? From their point of view, simply investigating something kind of gives legitimacy to claims that they believe are untrue, right? So they oppose looking into it simply because of what they believe is going to be the impact on people's perceptions. And that's what I think is going on. Do you think I'm right? Maybe it is a political pundit podcast with some trading on the side. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that I am it is. So what is it that you want me to give you? I feel like that some of you want me to give you something that I really don't think I should give you. Right? I could come in and I could say, I think that you should buy 38.45. And that's the ticket, guys. Let's buy 38.45. That's the ticket. Will I'll get rich. I intentionally don't do that. I know a lot of other guys do that. I think that eventually they're going to run into problems if that's what they're doing. There's real issues with trying to tell people to make trades. You are crazy, Seth. No, that's not what I asked. So do you think I'm wrong? Why do you think I'm wrong? Anyways, so I like objectively don't give you like direct trades, right? You need well, I don't even think you necessarily need licenses. In some cases, you do have to register for rooms and stuff like that, but I think that's a different thing if people aren't directly paying for the room. It's kind of more of the issue of is this. People tend to use other people as filters. They think, well, I can't know everything about this subject, but this person has already done a lot of investigation in that subject. And so I can use them as a filter to understand the things that are the most important for me to know. And then I can use that to make money in the markets. And the issue is that it doesn't work that way in markets. So why doesn't it work that way in markets? Because when you take a trade, there is an execution cost to you making that trade. Every trade, even if it is a one lot, has some measurable impact on the market, and there is a cost to it. And furthermore, when you make a buy and then you have a sell, that subsequent sell has a larger impact than if you were to buy and then buy again. So that means that on average, just from the execution cost alone, you're going to lose money, right? So if you are trading on a piece of information that everybody knows, then it's going to be hard for you to make money, right? So from my perspective, yeah, at no point have I ever heard you announce a trade ahead of time. I could honestly testify in court of that point. Yeah, I will take trades and I'm okay with you seeing it, but I intentionally make it so that you don't see what my trade is going to be until I'm already in it, because that's not the point. The point is, if I'm going to help you to day trade, the biggest thing that I can get to you is that you need to discover things that nobody else knows. This is why, like, if we're going through with news, if we're talking about informed trading, which means we're taking trades based off of information that we've learned from news or whatever other macroeconomics outside of the market, and we're bringing it into the market and we're trading off of that. You need to be good at finding that information that's going to give you good trades in the long run, right? And how do you do that? And that's what we're talking about today, right? You're going to have to find nuance, and you're going to have to find the things that other people aren't looking at, which is the thing that I'm good at. I don't know why I'm like that, but that's the thing that I believe I'm good at, right? But I think that people just want you to hand them here's the strategy, and you trade it, and I'm not going to give you that. I mean, I'll give you some things, but usually the things that I give you aren't necessarily because those are the best edges that I have, but because those are the ones that teach you the lessons that I'm trying to give you at that time. And yeah, I'll talk about politics, one, because talking about it can help you understand it, help you understand both what's actually going on in politics and how you can, use it to your advantage in trading. But also because I enjoy politics. And I can understand how if you're a Democrat, you might dislike what you're hearing. But my argument would be this: if you're a Democrat, you need to hear these things, because my intention is to tell you things that you weren't hearing before. Okay? That the majority of the court cases that were thrown out on standing grounds and not evidentiary grounds is this piece of information that you're going to hear a lot on the Republican side that the Democrats don't hear. That the border wall has basically already been paid for, or at least sections of the fence, and canceling the border construction that has already been scheduled will actually cost the taxpayers more money is a piece of information that if you're a Democrat, you probably aren't hearing right now, right? So then you get an advantage from listening to me for that. But if you want this stream to be about, here is the specific trade that I think you should take, and I'm only talking about trading and stuff, I don't think that I would be doing you a whole lot of benefit if I was doing that, because there are a lot of streams that do just that and they're worthless. Well, I tell you what, this trade is going to stop out. I should have taken profit, but I'm already past my time, right? I'm still a little uncertain about what is the driver for these moves. If I'm not hearing, the squawk isn't saying anything. I'm not seeing any actual news come through the market, certainly not in the last minute to cause that last move. It has been reported by Fox News that the contractors have already been paid. Let me say it again. It has been reported by Fox News that the contractors have already been paid, according to, oh man, I didn't even have it up anymore. That's not the only place that I saw that, though. I guess that would be maybe a possible spot of nuance, right? It may be the case that those news stories said that the contractors were already paid, and those news sources were misreading the original Fox News story that was actually saying that overall there will be a cost to it. That might be. Well, so now you're gonna, yeah, I know, I'm sure this is gonna come through. Yeah, people are saying at Fox, lol. Hey, listen, if their reporting is correct, their reporting is correct. Just like, I don't think if you go and you watch the Washington Post, I don't really think that you can run around and complain about people using Fox News for a source, you know? I mean, like, look, if Fox News gives an opinion, that's one thing. Fox News picks and chooses which piece of information they'll report on, that's one thing. Okay, but if they're reporting a fact, that's a fact. It's a fact. There you go. Uzi says, when I hear information that goes against my bias, I just criticize the source and it makes me feel better about myself. Bingo. The comment that Fox News is a bad source is kind of counterproductive to the kind of to what we're doing, right? It got me through high school. I tell you what, I didn't realize when I was a kid how unusual I was on those points. Because when I was a kid in high school, I was reading about whether or not the Iraq war was justified. And man, the internet arguments that we had over that stuff at points were just epic. And those people, I mean, they were older than me, and so maybe I just viewed it that way because they really were objectively smarter than me at the time. But man, I was just like, how do you guys know all of this stuff? Some of them were like people that were working in government and foreign policy, I think, and that's how they knew all of this stuff. But man, they just went on and on and on and on and on. And then I grow up, and basically I realized that the vast majority of people really didn't pay attention to any of that and didn't really know. Time for me to go, guys. Stay profitable, friends. If I can find my mouse cursor.